My name is Senior Master Sergeant Derek Anderson. I'm an Air Force pararescueman, and I currently work at the U.S. Special Operations Command's Joint Special Operations University, specifically in the Joint Special Operations Forces Senior Enlisted Academy as an instructor. I instruct the 7.5-month course that's meant for senior E7s, E8s, and certain E9s that teaches several different things across a 6-month distance learning period and 2 months in residence. I got here because I do find value in education. I think that it's a very important part, especially in a senior enlisted member's career, to understand higher level strategic things. And I thought that it would be an awesome way to give back to the community that's been giving to me for 20 years. So I asked about 1.5 years ago, I knew this position was going to open up for an Air Force member, so I asked if I would be able to come down here and fill it. Yeah, so at the time I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan at the 320th Special Tactics Squadron. The call came from our higher headquarters, Special Operations Command Pacific. They had been contacted by the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok, and the initial information was that there was 12 boys of a soccer team, and their coach had gone into a cave. It was initially dry, it had become flooded, and now they were trapped, and they were unsuccessful in the initial 24 to 48 hours of trying to rescue or recover them. So our squadron, being one of the very few squadrons that specializes in all types of personnel recovery, were contacted and asked if we could assist in the recovery. So naturally we said yes, loaded our equipment and our personnel, and we're on the ground in Thailand 18 hours later. I was the team leader, the senior enlisted leader for that mission. Myself and Major Charlie Hodges was my mission commander. And I guess I'm going to go back a little bit to talk initially about my upbringing. I spent the majority of my younger years, from about 2 to 15, growing up in South America in a very multicultural, diverse school. I had a lot of friends that spoke Spanish. I grew up speaking both English, Spanish, and then eventually learned French through the Air Force. So I had a lot of appreciation for understanding different cultures, different beliefs, but more importantly, kind of high context cultures, and how you can leverage and influence people to work together and to come together on common goals. So Thailand specifically was very difficult because ultimately we had upwards of 29 countries and initially like 10,000 people trying to help, right? So you can imagine it was a very chaotic scene. What the U.S. military did, and specifically Special Operations Command Pacific and our Special Tactics Squadron, is we were able to come in and really help provide command and control, of a very organized task organization between both the civil side of the rescue efforts and the military side, right? And then help sync and really get individual leadership roles brought together every day and have unity of effort, right? That's something that we really focused on here in JSOU. And over the course of 17 days, it was a long mission. It was very difficult, 17, 18-hour days, working with 29 countries. Obviously, the government of Thailand had the lead, and we were working, through them, advising and assisting, specifically with some of the rescue divers from Britain, the British Cave Rescue Council. There was some Australians that were also a pair. Dr. Harris and Dr. Craig Challen were both cave divers. One's an anesthesiologist and a veterinarian. So bringing all these different unique people, walks of life, and culture to ultimately conduct one of the world's most complicated and unprecedented rescues that had never been done before, right? Ultimately, we clinically sedated 12 children and their coach, brought them over 2.5 kilometers out through zero visibility, freezing waters, all while they were asleep, and didn't lose a single life, right? So it just goes to show, when you really have true teamwork and unity of effort focused on a cause, you can achieve what people have been calling the impossible. Yeah, so I would say the reason I initially joined the Air Force was, I wanted to do something cool. As a kid growing up in South America, I was always outdoors, climbing, adventuring. doing higher risk activities. So for me, it was either join the Navy and try to be a SEAL, or join the Air Force and try to become a pararescueman, which is ultimately what I read about my senior year of high school. So I knew it was extremely challenging, and for me, I enjoyed challenges as a 16, 17-year-old kid. So that's what I ended up deciding. My grandfather was a pilot in the Air Force, and I really enjoyed the training and the mental difficulties of getting through a difficult selection. And so after I graduated, it really didn't feel like a job. I was doing all these awesome things the Air Force provided me the opportunity to do with the equipment and the training, over the 2 years of training. But you really never stop training, right? You ask any special operator and they're going to tell you you train every single day your entire career, whether you're deployed or in garrison. So for me, I didn't really feel like it was a job. It was an opportunity to continue to pursue my passions, my hobbies with an awesome group of guys every day of the year, which is why I've ultimately stayed in, 2 decades later. I would say the most interesting thing is probably split between combat and civilian, right? We already kind of briefly talked about Thailand. That's obviously the civilian highlight of my career, the civilian mission of my career that I would probably look back on and say it's been the most memorable and the most difficult. Pararescuemen are known for doing very difficult civilian missions, not just in combat, where we'll do responses to Hurricane Katrina, the earthquakes in Haiti, big natural disasters, things like if a ship has an injured person 800 miles off the coast in the middle of the night, right? Those are the civil type missions we do that are difficult but memorable. The other one for me would probably be my first real combat deployment, where I was embedded with an Army ODA or Special Forces team, and I spent over 5.5 months doing direct action counterterrorism missions, where I really got to apply my tactical training, my medical skill sets, and then just be mentored by senior awesome joint service members in the SOF community. I think it was an awesome experience to really get mentored and learn on the ground, in combat, and apply all the things I had trained for so many years in a combat environment. So that very first deployment, was probably one of the most memorable, and it was great that we didn't really lose any U.S. members, just because we had a great team and we're fortunate. So those would probably be my two big defining moments. The first time I was in a combat zone and had a very kinetic deployment, and then the Thailand would be my civilian mission I look back on. Everybody can see the world's changing, right? It's not the same place we lived in 5, 10, or even 3 years ago, right? We spent 20 years in a very kinetic war, but there wasn't a whole lot of additional factors that were coming into play. And I think education and really higher level thinking is important as we're looking into the future, right? With things like the near peer threat, as we're trying to crack the nut on integrated deterrence, right? Multi-domain combat or even multi-domain deterrence. And so education, specifically in JSOU, is important because we focus on really taking that special operator, that member of SOCOM, to the next level of thinking, right? You've been at the tactical level for the majority of your career, leading people at those lower levels. What we try to do here, and what we've been very successful at, is the course is always evolving with the latest and greatest education and research and literature that we have from the field, from the TSOCs, and we're able to incorporate that as we're evolving the course and as we're running students through. But we're also focusing on very important things that will make you a value-add teammate to your officer counterpart, right? Being able to apply your intellectual standards, understanding the joint environment, the GIMSI environment, right? Your international partners, multinational, the commercial sector, what they're bringing with AI, with cyber, with space. So really tying all these different higher level aspects together to help your commander and SOCOM ultimately win the fight, right? Not just deterrence, right? But just understanding that there's a lot more that happens at the operational and specifically the strategic level, and teaching members that come through this course how to be strategic thinkers, how to apply intellectual standards, how to really shape and move an organizational culture forward despite all the things that are happening in the world. So that's probably the most fulfilling to me, is being able to see, as we're, a lot of the instructors here are over 20 years and don't have a time left, but passing on that information, challenging the next generation to be better than we are, is ultimately, I think, what I enjoy the most is about being an instructor here.